Help me reach 1,000 subscribers. She looked at me that night, her eyes steady but uncertain, her voice trembling just enough to betray what her words were about to do. I like you, she said softly, but I'm not in love with you. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it was quiet, almost gentle. Yet it hit me with a strange force. Not the kind that shatters instantly, but the kind that seeps through the skin and lingers, heavy and unshakable. I sat there still, hands resting loosely around the warm coffee cup, and let her words find their place in the silence between us. There was no scene, no pleading, no questions. Just truth, bare and cold, sitting on the table like a third presence neither of us could ignore. The dim lights of the cafe softened everything, her hair, her eyes, even the quiver in her jaw. I could see she had prepared herself for chaos. Maybe she thought I'd lash out, demand an explanation, ask her to reconsider. Instead, I exhaled slowly and said, "Thank you for being honest." Nothing more. No grand gestures, no desperate attempt to change her mind. My calm seemed to throw her off. I could feel it in the way her shoulders stiffened, how her gaze flickered from me to the cup she was nervously twisting in her hands. Inside, I felt the faint sting of rejection, that brief ache of something ending before it had the chance to begin fully. But beneath it was something stronger, understanding. I had always believed love should feel mutual, certain, and alive on both sides. If it didn't, then honesty, even painful honesty, was a gift. It saved us both from dragging a half-hearted bond forward. Outside, the streetlights painted long shadows on the windows, the world still turning as ours quietly stopped. I didn't text her after that night. Didn't replay our conversations or try to find hidden meanings in her tone. I let it go, not with bitterness but with resolve. Life, I realized, doesn't wait for us to heal before moving on, it moves regardless. So I kept my mornings simple, my thoughts uncluttered, my heart quiet. I poured my focus into my routines, into the stillness of moments I once ignored. It wasn't avoidance. It was acceptance. A few days later we crossed paths again, at a mutual friend's gathering. She looked beautiful, just as she always did. But this time her eyes darted through the crowd until they found mine. There was hesitation there. An unspoken question she didn't dare voice. I met her gaze for a heartbeat, gave a small nod, and then turned my attention elsewhere. That single act, calm, unbothered, said more than words ever could. I could almost feel her realization sink in, that the emotional power she once held had quietly dissolved. Weeks passed. Through friends I'd hear fragments, that she'd gone on dates, that nothing felt right, that she seemed distant. Sometimes I'd see her name online, her posts heavy with implication. But I didn't engage. I didn't feed the past. I was too busy living in the present, reading late at night, taking long walks through familiar streets, rediscovering pieces of myself I'd neglected. The more I stayed grounded, the more peaceful I became. Her confusion deepened in the face of my calm. Mine faded with every passing day. Then the messages began. Tentative at first. "Hey, how have you been?" Followed by longer ones, full of apologies and nostalgia. I read them once or twice, then deleted them without reply. There was no hatred in my silence. Just clarity. She had told me her heart wasn't mine, and I had chosen to believe her. To honor that truth even when she no longer could. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a quiet understanding that the story has already ended. One evening, as I walked past the same cafe where she had spoken those words, I caught sight of our old table through the glass. For a brief moment the memory returned, her laughter, the warmth of her hand brushing mine. But it didn't ache anymore. It simply existed like a chapter read and finished. I realized then that letting go doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it means remembering without pain. Love, I learned, isn't about possession. It's about presence. It's about recognizing when something no longer belongs to you, and letting it go with grace. She had taught me that even unintentionally. Her honesty, though painful, had freed me from uncertainty. I had stopped chasing what was never meant to stay. Life settled into a quiet rhythm after that. I met old friends again, picked up forgotten hobbies, found small joys in solitude. When she appeared in passing, in photos, gatherings, conversations, I greeted her with warmth but no longing. The peace in me was unshakable. In the end, the irony wasn't in her leaving. It was in what her leaving gave me. The peace of knowing who I was without her. Sometimes the strongest act of love isn't holding on, but walking away calmly, knowing that what's meant for you will never require you to beg, and what's not will never stay, no matter how tightly you cling.